Welcome to Unsettle Yourself. This week's topic is all about raising your standards and how that actually leads to unsettling. So, there are a few different ways that you can actually unsettle yourself, which means not settling for something less than what you're really worth and what you deserve. And the number one way that I've done that, and the first thing that I ever did in order to do that in my own life, was to raise my standards. And this came personally for me when I decided to change my eating habits. It was this idea that I was no longer going to accept what everyone else was telling me was healthy, or accepting just what was there, whether it was fast food or just like things in the grocery store. It was my way to raise my own standards so that I started actually consuming and nourishing my body with food that helped me rather than just either left me exactly where I was or actually was diminishing my overall health and my overall wellness. So when you raise your standards, to me, that's actually one of the easiest ways in order to start to unsettle yourself. And I feel like you can never raise your standards to be too high. If somebody says your standards are too high, you should definitely say thank you, because that means that you're not accepting less than you are worth, and you know exactly what you're worth, and you're not willing to go below that or to settle for that. So that's a huge positive in my book. So if anybody ever says that to you, say thank you. But really, understanding what you've allowed before and accepting that and understanding it, and now deciding that that's no longer going to be acceptable in your life. So it starts with that. It really starts with this decision to say, I'm going to raise my standard in this area or in this one thing. And you can start super small. It doesn't need to be huge. It doesn't need to be big. Just start somewhere and start sticking to it so that you can see that this is actually possible for yourself. So that's the first step, is deciding and making that choice. But the biggest thing, and I think the thing that we forget and we don't really put um, a lot of information or a lot of pressure on, and I don't want it to be pressure, but instead of just saying you're going to raise your standard and you're just not going to accept this, raise your standard and set what that actual standard is now. So instead of it just being this sort of elusive intention of not lowering your standards, set what that standard is. As soon as you reach it and you feel like you've accomplished that and you feel like you've mastered that level and you're ready to raise it again, then you raise it again. And you keep going like this throughout life, and you keep doing this so that ultimately, yes, your standards are going to be extremely high, but you're also going to understand why. And you're going to understand that it's because you're not accepting and you're not allowing all of these other things that don't add to the value of your life and that don't actually make your life better. So the key component here is making sure you know what you're raising your standard to. So for me, in the example of changing how I ate, my standard was I'm not going to eat any processed food at all. There was no cheat days, there were no other things involved. It was that's my standard. I don't dip below that because that's what is going to work for me. And once I mastered it, I moved on to something else. And that's what I want you to really start to do, because you'll understand what it really means to dedicate and to commit to yourself. But you have to set that standard first. So notice where your standards are at, raise them, decide exactly what that is, and then commit to not dipping below that new standard. And that's how you're going to start to unsettle your life now in this moment and for the moments to move on.